All right, so we will get started for today. Again, good morning. Lots of Louisiana-based folks on our call, which is great. So you can see the Heisman Trophy picture, or not picture, but Jaden Strike and the Heisman pose behind us. So we're a little festive this morning and equally as excited to launch this process for you all for the Teacher Leader Summit for 2024. And so thank you for joining us for this webinar this morning. Today's webinar will be centered around presentations and those of you who are looking to submit an application for presenting at the 2024 Summit. And so this morning we'll take a few minutes just to talk through a few things. You see the agenda on your screen as it relates to the 2024 Summit. And we really wanted to this year kind of rewind and take a moment to pause to first provide you with the information that you need through this webinar so that you can provide and facilitate, and as you're planning for your proposals, that you just do that armed with a little bit more information going into that process this year. And so that's our goal today with this agenda. And so first off, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so thankful for you even considering joining us as a presenter for the 2024 Summit. This is not a solo act by the department. It takes a wide village of support to make this summit a success for Louisiana's educators. And so we are grateful for those educators, for the organizations, for the entities who are willing to come and share their knowledge and their expertise by leading sessions for the 2024 Summit. We appreciate your partnership. So I wanted to make sure that we start off by just thanking you for joining us and for being here today. So as we think about 2024 and the Teacher Leader Summit, we are excited that we are leading the next level. And that is the theme for the event in 2024, leading the next level. And the summit will happen May 28th through May 30th. So that same time frame for those of you who may have joined us in the past, post Memorial Day. And once again, the summit will take place at the Ernest and Morial Convention Center in New Orleans. The purpose of the summit is to provide a professional learning opportunity for educators all across Louisiana that educate and serve our students from birth to and through grade 12, and for our content level experts and those who support education across the state to really, again, have the opportunity for professional development, share your knowledge, exchange your ideas, and learn new skills as you prepare for the 2024-2025 school year. And so the Teacher Leader Summit in 2024 will offer educators and attendees over 700 sessions. And so those sessions will be led by department team members, partner organizations, so some of you on this Zoom now, and educators, again, some of whom have joined us today from all across Louisiana. And we are equally excited. So for you to see that 700 number, if you joined Summit in the past, you're like, wow, that number is a little bit higher than I remember. Well, that's because we are expanding Summit in 2024 by 25 to 30% in terms of attendees. We anticipate serving and welcoming 7,500 educators to Teacher Leader Summit this year. And so we are extremely excited about that and about the learning and engagement opportunities that come along with that. And that summit continues to grow and develop every year. And so we will start off by taking a quick look at the schedule. And again, for those of you who have joined us in the past, a lot of this is very similar to what you have seen in the past, with Summit starting on Tuesday, May 28th, a full day with registration starting at 7:30 in the morning. We are opening the expo a little earlier this year at 8 a.m., the general opening session at 9, and then breakout sessions really starting around 10:15 and continuing until 4 p.m. on the first day before we have some networking event sessions. On Wednesday, the 29th, again, registration will open at 7, expo will run from 8 to 4, and on Wednesday, we get straight to it with the sessions at 8 a.m., and that day goes through until 4:45 p.m. And on Thursday, a shorter kind of half day here, with our sessions beginning at 8 and continuing through until 11:30 a.m. So there are really 13 blocks of breakout sessions. So those 700 sessions that we anticipate offering will happen over those 13 content blocks of sessions. And so as we're thinking about the presentations and the proposals that you may be working on here soon, we wanted to, again, take a step to provide a little bit of context as we are thinking about what are successful applications and what might the department be prioritizing when it comes to reviewing the applications. Now listen, last year we were overwhelmed with the response and the number of applications for presentations that came into the door. It was really just a great thing to see that so many people wanted to be involved and engaged and present and share knowledge and best practices with the educators. And so again, we hope that that same interest remains. And with the number of external sessions that we receive, and as well as the number of sessions that I mentioned before that are going to be facilitated by department team members, it's a balance and a puzzle, and trying to get all of those pieces to work is a challenge, but it's one that we wanted to make sure that on the front end, we were giving you a little bit more context into that process this year, so that when you're planning your applications, that you have that understanding and that knowledge as you're moving forward. So what you see on your screen here is just a list and some additional information as it relates to how and what proposals will be prioritized during the selection process. And largely those are in 3 categories that you see: the instructional leadership teams, teacher collaboration, and the career pipeline. And so when we think about those essential professional structures in the ILTs, the teacher collaboration, and the career pipelines, presentations and those topics related to those 3 structures will be prioritized during the selection process. Now, this information will be shared, and you'll be able to get it and grab it off of the presentation document that is on the LDOE website. So I'm not going to read every sub bullet point to you, but we did want to highlight those broad areas for your consideration. Just so you know, when it comes to prioritization, again, of the sessions, of the presentations, those dealing with instructional leadership teams, teacher collaboration, and the career pipeline will be prioritized during the selection process. And feel free, if you have questions, to drop them in the chat at any point. We will answer them either in the chat, or I will save some time at the end of the presentation for questions. And so as you continue to think about, right, what is a successful presenter application? We again wanted to provide some context and a little bit of a definition in terms of how we are thinking about a successful application as we're going through reviewing and considering the application. So here are some of the things. Is your presentation topic engaging? Is it one that will grab the attention of your audience and have them engaged in that learning process? That is a huge determinant of whether or not you feel that your application is going to be successful. Will your application and your presentation, as it's presented to us during this process, utilize an entire hour of time? So for example, last year we may have received some presentation applications, and when we opened the slides, there were 2 slides. Well, we know that those 2 slides are not going to take a full hour of time, or it may have been, maybe in the situation that the topic was so narrow and slim that we didn't feel that it would engage, again, to the engagement part, engage your audience for an entire hour of time. And so we're really looking to see how you're utilizing that hour of time and building through your content and your learning to have to fill that block of time. Now, another quality of a successful presenter application that we wanted to make sure that we elevate during this conversation is whether or not your presentation application is aligned to the state priorities, the best practices, and the research that is out there. So specifically, a lot of that information that LDOE comes and presents or has on their website, and you can look down a few bullet points here, is your application following the high quality professional learning cycle? And you can link that in the chat for you as well. So there's an abundance of resources from LDOE that we want to, we'll be looking for during that presentation process. Is your presentation aligned to those priorities, to the best practices that are in place, and to the research that is out there? And again, when you're thinking about constructing your presentation and making one that is going to be considered successfully received by your audience, are you including time to reflect on the learning, right? A big part of what especially our educators do every day is to make sure that we have time to reflect on the learning and have a thorough enough amount of time to either engage, make those connections to our actual roles and responsibilities, and ask the relevant questions. Are you including time to do that, to have that reflection in your learning? And are you facilitating your attendees with the making of those connections with their role versus the content you're providing, right? And so is that content, again, in the next area, relevant to the audience you select? So we'll talk through the application here in a few slides. And so when you're presenting your application proposal, you're also selecting an audience, right? So is the content that you're providing aligned and appropriate and relevant to the audience that you select during that process? Is also a big question. And are you also offering opportunities for collaboration through your presentation? So is there a window or space for you to encourage, enhance, increase collaboration with your audience, with the attendees, or within districts or within schools? Is there an opportunity for you to kind of reinforce or inform some collaborative opportunities that may be out there? Is your presentation considerate of adult learners, right? So how well can the content that you are looking to present, how well does that content apply to a diverse learning population? And is there a way that when you are crafting your presentation proposals or crafting your proposal that you can make your teaching and the learning, that the outcomes that come out of that, applicable to a diverse learning population? And ultimately, we want participants to leave with clear, actionable steps to implement. So as a result of your proposal, do presenters know, when I return to my job, I can do these 3 things to be more successful, or I can take these 2 nuggets that I've learned during this session to implement in my everyday work? Are they leaving your session with applicable steps that they can implement to make their work, to make their experiences better? And so that is something else that we will be looking for during that process. And then also, right, have you had prior successful experience in facilitating professional learning? So during that application, again, we do ask, have you presented at Teacher Leaders Summit in the past? If so, give us a little bit of a window into that, right? Do you have successful experience facilitating professional learning in the past? Now, a lot of qualities right here on this slide, and we know that not every quality or every descriptor will apply to every presentation that comes through. But again, these are some of the things when you think through the process that the evaluators are going through when they're looking through many applications that make presentations unique and make presentations rise to the top to be those that are selected for presentation at Summit. And so we really wanted to take time to emphasize these areas for you as you're thinking about crafting your proposals and your actual presentations. Is it engaging? Are we going to use that entire time block? How well is my presentation aligned to those state priorities, best practices, and research? Is it following the high quality professional learning cycle? Am I including a little bit of time for reflection, helping to make those connections, those networking opportunities, that collaboration? Am I ensuring that the content that I'm presenting is relevant for the audience that I selected? Is my content relative to a diverse learning population and considerate of those diverse learners, including our adult learners? And will my participants leave with some clear and concrete takeaways that they can implement into their work? And so those are really the qualities that we think about when we think about successful presenter applications. And so as you are, I think I just mentioned or referenced this a few minutes ago, as you are thinking about the application in your process, these are just a few of the things in that call for proposals that we'll be looking for during that process. So of course, your session title, your presenter information, summaries of your sessions, the content area grade levels. We'll ask you things like what days would you choose, prefer to present, and your rotation availability, your room size and setup preferences, right? So these are just some of those things that as you're going through the application process that we ask that you provide this information so that you're thinking about it. And then that way, for those that are approved, that we already have a good basis of knowledge to help schedule your presentations accordingly at Summit. And so what does that look like? For those of you that joined us in last year in 2023 for the Summit, you know that all of the application information is processed through the CVent platform. So for 2024, once again, we will be utilizing CVent, and all communication regarding your information will come via CVent. So on your screen, you do see a few snapshots of what that CVent screen is, and these questions are just built out. I know you don't have to read the fine print here, it's pretty small, but these are just a built out of some of those questions that I just mentioned in some of those areas on the prior slide. So it just gives you a visual. So you will utilize CVent to submit your application again in 2024 for Teacher Leader Summit. Wanted to make sure that we are pausing here to give you a little bit more information for the actual presentation template and how your submitted presentation should come with your application. There is a template that is a PowerPoint template or Google Slides template that you should download when you are ready to actually, you've gotten through all the questions on CVent and you're ready to share your actual presentation. You are to utilize that Teacher Leader Summit 2024 template. On the first slide, so there's a cover slide that you see here on your screen, it says presentation template and instructions. The next slide has instructions in terms of how you utilize the slide presentation. So your content for your proposal must be provided in this template. So there's some general information here, right? Like all presentations must include the following slides. So you must have the cover slide. That's number one. You must have a title slide. You must have a slide that lists your objectives. You must have a slide with the agenda for your session. And then you can have your content slides, again, in the template, in the same format. Then you must have a closing slide with your takeaways with the next steps. Remember, like we just talked about for successful presentations, your presenter, contact information, and then the thank you closing slide. And so it's really important that your presentations are submitted in the Teacher Leader Summit template and that you're submitting the full presentation as you would present it at Teacher Leader Summit. Again, there are guidelines in the slide. Now, why is this important? It's important for a number of reasons, specifically because if we're looking at your application and you're saying, hey, my goals in my presentation are to do this, and we have a few questions about it, right? We can then go to your full presentation and figure out what we may have been missing. We can see that content and then better get an understanding of where you're going with your presentation, what those goals are, and how you plan to share them forward during your presentation. And so it is really, I would say, probably equally as important that you have a full application, but you also have a full slide deck with your materials, with the session materials that you plan to present at Summit, also prepared and also ready. Now, this is for your evaluation process. I'll put a little asterisk here in saying that for those of you who may get approved for Summit, there may be instances where you're recommended to make a few edits. You may want to make a few tweaks, and that's okay. What we are asking for here is your closest to final, here's how I want to present this content at Teacher Leader Summit presentation for consideration. just so that the reviewers who are going through the review process understand where you're going with your presentation, right? And also note that there are multiple layers of review. So each presentation goes through multiple layers of review and feedback. And so we want during every step of the way for people to really be able to have the opportunity to thoroughly assess your application and whether or not it is a good fit for Teacher Leader Summit in 2024. And so here's where we are, our timeline. We will officially issue the call for proposals on January 5th, and you'll have about a month. So up until February 2nd, that application will stay open. So you'll see information on the Teacher Leader Summit website that we can link, letting you know that the call for proposals is open, that you can click and fill out the information. It'll take you directly to CVent to input your information. And again, so January 5th, right after the holidays, you'll have a great holiday and maybe a little bit of work time during your break, even though we don't want to work during our breaks. But January 5th, and again, we wanted to give you enough lead time to have this conversation today versus, before the February 2nd close date for the external proposals. After that close of February 5th, we will go through a review period of all of the proposals up until around March 15th, at which point we will communicate back to you to let you know either A, congratulations, your presentation proposal has been accepted, or B, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to offer you this opportunity. Please continue to work with us and to submit, and hope we see you at Teacher Leader Summit and look forward to having you present in future years, right? And so that communication and that process in terms of those confirmations will happen from March 18th through the 20th. And then for those of you who are selected, you will have a little bit of time to get with kind of your content area lead and finalize your slide decks, make any changes that are, that may be requested or that you may want to add. And then we would ask for all finalized slide decks by April 12th. And then before we get down to Summit, we do have another webinar, and those webinars will be either on May 6th or May 8th. You'll have the option of attending one or the two of those sessions. And during those webinars, we will be talking about kind of things that are relevant at that point and timely to actually getting down to New Orleans, parking, presenting, what's going to be in the room when you walk in to present, how many people can you anticipate, all of those things that are kind of immediately pressing as it relates to Teacher Leader Summit. We will discuss on those webinars in May before we actually get on the ground in New Orleans. And so that is a quick window of the information that we wanted to share today. Again, prior to the time when we're opening the call for proposals on January 5th, just to give you a little bit more context, and we hope it's helpful to have this on the outset, especially the information regarding what we're looking for in your proposal applications and the actual slide decks. And then as the review process is going on, what are some of those things that are prioritized and how are we really considering what a successful presentation may be. And so at this point, I will pause and we are happy to field any questions that you may have. There's also an email address on your screen, so events@emergentmethod.com, that you can utilize for any questions that you may have after this point. So I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll take questions.